I remember the exact moment everything changed. Not because it was dramatic or loud or filled with explosions like the vids always show. It was quiet. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The year was 2187, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Alliance for exactly 42 years. We were the new kids on the block, the ones everyone looked down on because we hadn't figured out faster-than-light travel on our own, because we needed help, because we were still figuring out how to not kill each other over stupid things like borders and beliefs, and who had the better sports team. Earth was a protectorate world. That meant we had Alliance ships in orbit, Alliance soldiers on the ground, and Alliance laws that superseded our own. Most humans didn't mind. The alternative was being left alone to destroy ourselves, and we'd been doing a pretty good job of that before first contact. My name is Marcus Webb. I was 23 years old at the time, working as a translator at the New London Diplomatic Compound. It was a fancy title for someone who spent most of his day making sure human words didn't offend anyone from the other 23 species in the Alliance. The money was decent, the job was safe, and it kept me close to my little sister, Ilara. Ilara was the reason I was there that day. She worked in the xenobiology wing, studying the various life forms that had been brought to Earth for research and preservation. It was her dream job, the one she'd wanted since she was 6 years old, watching nature documentaries on her tablet and asking questions I couldn't answer. She was 17, brilliant, and completely oblivious to how dangerous her work could be. The compound was a massive structure, all chrome and glass and sweeping curves that looked like something from a dream. It had been built specifically for the Alliance, a place where diplomats from 100 different worlds could meet and negotiate and pretend they didn't secretly hate each other. Humans had designed it, but the tech was all Alliance. Gravity lifts, holographic displays, environmental controls that kept every room at the perfect temperature for whichever species was using it. My office was small, barely bigger than a closet, but it had a view. On clear days, I could see the Thames glinting in the distance, the old London Bridge still standing somehow, a relic from a time when humans had been alone in the universe. I was reviewing a translation of a Vraxian trade agreement when the intercom buzzed. The sound was sharp and grating, the kind of noise that made you want to throw something at the wall. "Webb, your sister's here again." It was Sandra from reception, her voice dripping with the kind of annoyance only a human can muster after dealing with alien bureaucrats all morning. "Send her up," I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Ilara had a habit of showing up unannounced, usually with some crisis that needed solving. The door slid open 5 minutes later, and there she was. My little sister, all wild curls and bright eyes, wearing a lab coat that was too big for her and carrying a datapad covered in notes. "Marcus, you have to see this," she said, barely pausing to breathe. She shoved the datapad into my hands and started pacing the small office, her energy filling the space until it felt like the walls were closing in. I looked at the screen. It was covered in diagrams and genetic sequences, lines of code I could only partially understand, something about neural pathways and synaptic responses. "Ilara, I can't read this," I said, handing it back. "You know that." "It's about the Veldra," she said, her eyes practically glowing with excitement. "The research team just released their preliminary findings. Their nervous systems are completely different from anything we've seen before. They don't process pain the same way, and their regenerative capabilities." "Ilara," I interrupted gently, "I'm working." She stopped pacing and looked at me like I'd just insulted her entire existence. "You're always working. When was the last time you actually looked at something that wasn't a trade agreement?" "Yesterday," I said. "I looked at a sandwich." She didn't laugh. She just stood there, that earnest expression on her face, the one that made her look like she was 12 instead of 17. It was the same look she'd given me when she was little, when I'd tell her that no, We couldn't adopt a stray dog because we didn't have room, and she'd say, "But Marcus, it has no one." "Fine," I sighed, pushing back from my desk. "Show me." Her face lit up like I'd given her the moon. She pulled up the schematics on the holographic display in the corner of the room, and I watched as a three-dimensional model of a Veildra appeared, rotating slowly in the air. The Veildra were one of the more recent additions to the Alliance. They were reptilian, covered in scales that shifted color based on their mood, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They were also massive, easily 7 feet tall on average, with claws that could tear through steel and teeth designed to rend flesh. "They're classified as a level 3 threat," I said, reading from the display. "Ilara, why are you working with something that could literally eat you?" She rolled her eyes, a gesture she'd perfected over the years. "They're not aggressive, Marcus. They're just misunderstood. The research is showing that they're actually quite gentle. Their society is based on cooperation and mutual protection. They only become violent when someone threatens them," I finished, "which is exactly what you're doing by poking them with needles." "It's not like that," she insisted. "We're not hurting them. We're learning from them. They have a healing factor that could revolutionize human medicine. Imagine being able to regenerate lost limbs, or cure diseases that we've been fighting for centuries." I looked at the hologram, at the creature's massive form and dangerous claws. "And you're sure they're safe?" "Perfectly safe," she said. "I've been working with them for 6 months now. They're curious and intelligent and—" "Ilara," I interrupted again, "I'm not telling you to stop. I'm just asking you to be careful." She smiled, that brilliant smile that always managed to win me over. "I'm always careful." The xenobiology wing was on the lower levels of the compound, where the walls were thicker and the security was tighter. It was a maze of corridors and labs, each one designed for a different species, a different type of research. The air smelled like antiseptic and something else, something organic and faintly sweet. Dr. Helena Vasquez was the head of the department. She was a small woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, the kind of person who missed nothing. She'd been working with Alliance species for 15 years, and she'd seen enough to know when something was wrong. That morning, she was reviewing the daily reports when the intercom buzzed. "Dr. Vasquez, we have a problem with the Veildra enclosure." She was on her feet before the sentence was finished. "What kind of problem?" "The Alpha is agitated. We can't figure out why. He's been pacing for the last hour, and he's growling at the observation window." Helena's blood ran cold. The Alpha was the largest of the Veildra, a male named Kathrak who had been the subject of extensive study. He'd never shown aggression before. He was always calm, always curious, almost gentle in his interactions with the researchers. "I'm on my way," she said, already moving toward the door. The corridor was empty this early in the morning, just the hum of the environmental systems and the occasional whir of cleaning drones. Helena walked quickly, her footsteps echoing off the chrome walls. The Veildra enclosure was at the end of the hall, a massive room with reinforced walls and a ceiling that was meant to simulate the conditions of their homeworld. It was humid and warm, with artificial vegetation that provided cover and enrichment. Through the observation window, Helena could see Kathrak pacing. He was enormous, easily 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted from deep green to angry red as he moved. His tail lashed back and forth, and his eyes were fixed on something in the distance. "What's he looking at?" Helena asked, joining the researcher at the window. "I don't know," the researcher said. "There's nothing there. We've checked everything." Helena watched for a moment, her brow furrowed. The Alpha was definitely agitated, but there was something else in his behavior. He seemed protective, like he was guarding something. "Where's the junior researcher?" Helena asked. "The web girl." "She's in the observation room," the researcher said. "She's been taking notes on the Alpha's behavior patterns." Helena felt a chill run down her spine. Get her out now. But it was too late. The sound was deafening, a screeching wail that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The lights flickered, and the holographic display in the center of the room went dark. "What the hell is that?" Chen demanded, his face pale. "Lockdown protocol," someone shouted. "There's a breach in the lower levels." I was on my feet before I realized what I was doing. Ilara, she was in the lower levels. She was in the xenobiology wing. "Marcus, wait," Chen called after me, but I was already running. The hallways were chaos. People were running in every direction, their faces masks of fear. The lights were still flickering, casting strange shadows on the walls. The alarms continued their relentless wail, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of something breaking. I reached the elevator and slammed the button, but nothing happened. The power must have been cut. I took the stairs instead, racing down flight after flight until my legs burned and my lungs screamed. The lower levels were worse. There were cracks in the walls, deep gouges that looked like they'd been made by claws. The air was thick with dust and something else, something that smelled like ozone and blood. I found the xenobiology wing in chaos. The reinforced door was buckled, half crushed like it had been hit by something massive. Through the gap I could see the lab beyond, a scene of destruction. There was a Veildra in the corridor. Not the alpha, but a younger male, its scales a wild pattern of red and orange. It was snarling, its claws extended, its eyes fixed on something on the ground. And then I saw her. Ilara was on the floor, backed against a wall, her datapad clutched to her chest like a shield. She was crying, tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't screaming. She was trying to talk to the creature, her voice calm and soothing even as her whole body shook. "It's okay," she was saying. "It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you." The creature didn't seem to hear her. It took a step forward, its claws scraping against the floor, and I knew I had to do something. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember moving. I threw myself between Ilara and the creature, spreading my arms wide like that would somehow stop it. "Get away from her," I shouted. My voice cracked and I could feel my legs trembling, but I didn't move. "Get back." The creature stopped. It tilted its head, its eyes narrowing as it studied me. I could smell its breath, hot and rank, and I could see the muscles in its legs tensing, preparing to attack. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. The creature lunged, and I saw its massive jaws open, saw the rows of teeth gleaming in the flickering light. I heard Ilara scream, and then I felt the pain. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced. A searing, burning pain that radiated from my shoulder and spread through my entire body. I could feel the creature's teeth sinking into my flesh, and I could feel something else, something that felt like electricity coursing through my veins. And then it was over. The creature released me and stepped back, its head cocked to the side. It was studying me again, its eyes unreadable. I collapsed to the floor, clutching my shoulder. Blood was pouring through my fingers, hot and sticky. Ilara was screaming, but I couldn't hear her anymore. Everything was fading, going dark at the edges. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was Kathrak, the Alpha, standing over me. His scales were a deep, peaceful blue, and his eyes were filled with something that looked almost like approval. The room was white, blindingly so, and the air smelled like antiseptic and something else, something I couldn't quite identify. There was a soft hum in the background, the sound of medical equipment monitoring my vitals. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was Ilara. She was sitting in a chair next to my bed, her eyes red from crying, her hands clutching mine like she was afraid I'd disappear. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Oh God, Marcus, I thought you were dead." "I'm fine," I said, or tried to say. My voice came out as a croak, barely audible. "Don't talk," she said. Just rest. The doctor said you need to rest." But I couldn't rest. There were too many questions. What happened, the creature? "It's okay," she said quickly. "It's okay." Kathrak stopped it. He came out of nowhere and just stopped it. The younger one backed down immediately. "Kathrak is the alpha, so—" "What happened to me?" I interrupted. "I can feel something in my shoulder." Alara's face went pale. "Marcus, the bite, it wasn't normal. The Vaildra have a healing factor, but their bite, it transfers some of that factor to the victim. You're going to be okay. Better than okay, actually. The doctor said you'll regenerate faster than normal. Your wounds will heal in days instead of weeks, but there might be side effects." "Side effects?" I asked, trying to sit up. She pushed me back down gently. "You'll have some of their traits," she said carefully. Just a little. You might be stronger, more resistant to injury. And you might—" She paused, looking like she was trying to find the right words. "I might what?" I pressed. "You might be able to sense them," she said finally. "The Vaildra, they communicate through something like telepathy. It's not true telepathy, more like empathy. They can sense emotions, intentions, and now you might be able to sense them too." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. I was part Vaildra now. That couldn't be right. That was impossible. But then I closed my eyes and I could feel it. A presence in the back of my mind, a warmth that hadn't been there before. It was calm and patient and curious, and I knew without being told that it was Kathrak. The Alpha was watching me, and he was pleased. 3 days later, a delegation from the Alliance arrived at the compound. I'd been released from the medical bay, but I was still weak, still adjusting to the changes happening in my body. I could feel things now, subtle things that I'd never noticed before. The emotions of the people around me, the tension in the air, the way the environmental systems hummed with a barely perceptible frequency. Alara had been staying with me, refusing to leave my side even when I told her she needed to go back to work. She'd been shaken by the incident, more shaken than she'd ever admit. I could feel her guilt through the bond, a constant low-level hum of regret. "They're here," she said one afternoon, looking up from her datapad. "The Alliance delegation. They want to talk to you." "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. "About what happened, about the bond." She paused. "Marcus, this is unprecedented. No human has ever bonded with a Vaildra before. The Alliance doesn't know what to make of it." I nodded slowly. I'd been expecting this. The Alliance had a way of dissecting everything, of trying to understand it through their rigid categories and classifications. They didn't like things that didn't fit neatly into their systems. The delegation was waiting in the main conference room. There were 5 of them, representing different species, all of them studying me with unreadable expressions. Ambassador Chen was there too, looking uncomfortable in his formal robes. He'd been my boss for 2 years, and I could tell he was trying to figure out how this would affect his career. "Marcus Webb," the lead delegate said. She was a Xylos, tall and insectoid, her chitinous armor gleaming in the artificial light. "We have reviewed the incident. We have also reviewed the medical data. You have undergone a significant change." "Thank you," I said. "I hadn't noticed." There was a moment of silence, and I realized my sarcasm had been a mistake. The Xylos didn't respond well to humor. She just stared at me with her multifaceted eyes, waiting. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "That was inappropriate." "Acknowledged," she said. "Now we have a proposal. The Vaildra are a valuable member of the Alliance. Their healing factor is unprecedented in the known galaxy. We believe your bond with the Alpha is an opportunity." "Opportunity?" I asked, my voice skeptical. "Yes, we want you to work with the Vaildra, to study the bond, to understand its implications. In exchange, we will provide you with resources and protection. Your sister will be allowed to continue her research with full Alliance support." It was a bribe, plain and simple. They were trying to buy my cooperation. "What if I refuse?" I asked. The Xylos' expression didn't change, but I could feel the shift in the room. The tension increased. the air growing thick with unspoken threats. "We would not advise that," she said simply. "The Vaildra have chosen you. There are protocols. You will be required to participate in the Alliance's diplomatic corps." "What? I've got protocols." "I'm a translator. My role is—" "Was a translator," the Xylos said. "The bond with the Vaildra has changed your designation. You are now a diplomatic asset. Your position is non-negotiable." I looked at Alara and she looked at me. She looked scared, and I could feel her fear through the bond, a sharp spike of anxiety. "Fine," I said finally. "I'll do it." Chapter 6: The Road to Kaithrak's World. The next few weeks were a blur of briefings and medical tests, and endless discussions about protocols. The Alliance wanted to understand everything about the bond, from its biological basis to its psychological implications. I went along with it because I didn't have a choice. But part of me, a growing part, was starting to resent the Alliance's cold, calculating approach. They treated me like a specimen, something to be studied and categorized. The only moments of peace I got were when I was with Kaithrak. We'd spend hours together in the xenobiology wing, me sitting on the floor of his enclosure while he watched me with his glowing eyes. I couldn't understand his language, not in the traditional sense, but I could feel his emotions, his thoughts. He was patient and curious, and he seemed to enjoy my presence in a way that I didn't fully understand. "You know," Alara said one day, watching us through the observation window, "he looks at you like you're his." "His what?" I asked, turning to look at her. "His," she repeated, "like you belong to him, like he's protecting you." I shook my head. "I don't think it works that way. I've been studying them for 6 months, Marcus. I know how they think." She paused, her expression serious. "The Vaildra are pack animals. They bond for life, and Kaithrak has chosen you as part of his pack." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and significant. "What does that mean for me?" I asked finally. She shrugged. "I don't know, no one knows. You're the first human to ever bond with a Vaildra. You're writing the history as you go." I turned back to look at Kaithrak, and I felt something shift inside me. A sense of belonging, of connection that I'd never felt before. It was strange and terrifying, but also oddly comforting. "Is that why they're sending me to his world?" I asked. "To see if I can be part of his pack there." Alara nodded. "They want to test the bond, to see if it holds up in the Vaildra's natural environment. It's a diplomatic mission, but it's also an experiment." "I'm an experiment," I said bitterly. "You're the best chance we have of understanding them," she corrected gently. "The Alliance has been trying to understand the Vaildra for decades. They've always been reserved, secretive. But Kaithrak opened up to you in a way he's never opened up to anyone else." I didn't know what to say to that. I just stood there, watching Kaithrak's massive form in the enclosure, feeling the warmth of his presence in my mind. The ship that would take me to Kaithrak's world was called the Pathfinder. It was a sleek, silver vessel, designed for long-distance exploration. The Alliance had spared no expense, fitting it with the latest technology and a crew of experienced explorers. I'd never been off Earth before. I'd never even been in orbit. The idea of traveling to another world, of leaving everything I knew behind, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Alara came to see me off. She hugged me tightly, and I felt the tears on her cheeks. "Be careful," she whispered. "Don't do anything stupid." "When have I ever done anything stupid?" I asked, trying to joke. She pulled back and looked at me, her face serious. "Marcus, I mean it. If anything happens to you—" "Nothing's going to happen," I said quickly. "I'll be fine. I've got Kaithrak watching my back." She didn't laugh. She just stood there, her eyes full of worry. "I'll come back," I promised. "I'll come back and tell you everything." I boarded the ship with a sense of dread. The corridor was narrow and brightly lit, and I could feel the hum of the engines through the floor. The crew was a mix of different species, all of them watching me with unreadable expressions. "Welcome aboard, Marcus Webb," a voice said. I turned and saw a tall, slender figure standing in the doorway. She was human, or at least mostly human, with silver eyes that glowed faintly. "I'm Captain Lyra Vance," she said. "I'll be your commanding officer for this mission." "Captain," I said, trying to sound professional, "it's an honor." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Save the platitudes. We have a long journey ahead of us, and we need to be clear about our objectives." She led me to the bridge, a large room filled with holographic displays and banks of controls. Through the viewport, I could see Earth growing smaller, a blue marble in the void. "We're bound for the Vaildra homeworld," Captain Vance said, standing at the main console. "It's a journey of approximately 2 weeks. During that time, I'll be expecting you to familiarize yourself with the mission objectives." "What are the objectives?" I asked. She turned to look at me, her silver eyes unblinking. "To make contact with the Vaildra, to establish a formal diplomatic relationship, to learn as much as we can about their culture and their technology." "In the bond?" I asked. "What's my role?" She paused, studying me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "The bond is a variable. We don't fully understand it, but it's a starting point. Kaithrak trusts you, and that trust could be the key to opening a door that's been closed for centuries." I felt a surge of unease. "I'm not a diplomat, I'm a translator." "You're more than that now," she said simply, "whether you like it or not. 2 weeks in space is a long time." I spent most of it in my quarters, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand the changes happening in my body. The healing factor the Vaildra had given me was working, slowly but surely. My wounds had healed completely, leaving only faint scars. I could feel the strength in my muscles, the resilience of my bones. I was stronger than I'd ever been, faster, tougher. But the thing that frightened me the most was the bond. I could feel Kaithrak's presence in my mind constantly now. It was like a thread connecting us, stretching across the void. I couldn't hear his thoughts, not exactly, but I could feel his emotions. His calm, his patience, his curious interest in everything around him. He was aware of me, and I was aware of him, and the bond was getting stronger every day. "Are you doing okay, Webb?" Captain Vance's voice came through the intercom. "We're approaching the Vaildra system. I thought you might want to see it." I made my way to the bridge, my heart pounding in my chest. Through the viewport, I could see a vast expanse of stars and in the distance, a planet. It was beautiful. Swirling clouds of blue and green, vast oceans of liquid water, land masses covered in lush vegetation. It looked like Earth, but wilder, more untamed. "Welcome to Varith," Captain Vance said softly, "the Vaildra homeworld." I stared at the planet, feeling a strange sense of recognition. I'd never been here before, but somehow it felt familiar. I could feel Kaithrak's excitement through the bond, a childlike joy at returning home. "The Vaildra have requested that you be the first to make landfall," Captain Vance said. "They're sending a shuttle to pick you up." The shuttle was small, barely big enough for 2 people. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands gripping the armrests as we descended through the atmosphere. The turbulence was rough, shaking the shuttle like a toy, but the pilot was skilled, guiding us through the stormy sky with practiced ease. We landed in a clearing surrounded by massive trees. The air was humid and thick, carrying strange smells I'd never encountered before. The vegetation was dense, with leaves that glowed faintly in the dim light. And there, waiting for me in the clearing, was Kaithrak. He was enormous, easily 10 feet tall, his scales a deep, iridescent blue. He was surrounded by other Vaildra, all of them watching me with unreadable expressions. I stepped out of the shuttle, my heart racing, my palms sweating. I felt their eyes on me, evaluating me, judging me. Kaithrak stepped forward, and I felt a surge of warmth through the bond. He lowered his massive head and pressed his snout against my chest. a gesture of greeting that I somehow understood. "Marcus Webb," a voice said. It came from nowhere and everywhere, echoing in my mind. "You are welcome on Varith." I looked up and saw an older Vaildra standing at the edge of the clearing. His scales were a deep gold, and his eyes were bright with intelligence. "I am Naroth," he said, "the keeper of the bond. I have been expecting you." Naroth led me through the forest, his massive form moving with surprising grace. The other Vaildra followed at a respectful distance, their eyes fixed on me. "You have bonded with Caithrak," Naroth said, his mental voice ringing in my head. "This is a rare thing. The bond is sacred to us. It is not given lightly." "I didn't choose it," I said. "It just happened." "Perhaps," Naroth said, "or perhaps it was always meant to happen. The bond is not a choice. It is a recognition of something deeper than biology or circumstance." I didn't know what to say to that. The words felt heavy, meaningful in a way I couldn't quite understand. "Caithrak is the alpha of his clan," Naroth continued. "His bond is not just a personal matter, it is a political one. His clan will follow his lead, and they will follow your lead as well." "What?" I asked, startled. "I don't want to lead anyone." "It is not a matter of want," Naroth said simply. "It is a matter of reality. The bond requires balance. If one partner leads, the other follows. In this case, you are the leader in matters of diplomacy. Caithrak is the leader in matters of war." "But I'm not a leader," I insisted. "I'm just a translator." "You are more than that now," Naroth said. "The bond has changed you. It has made you a bridge between our peoples. That is a responsibility, and it is a privilege." I felt a sudden wave of fear. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for any of this. I was just a normal guy who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Caithrak's presence in my mind grew stronger, his calm assurance washing over me. He wasn't worried. He believed in me, trusted me, in a way that I couldn't fully understand. "Marcus," Naroth said, his mental voice gentle, "the bond is not a burden, it is a gift. A gift of understanding, of connection, of shared purpose. Do not be afraid to accept it." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. I wasn't sure if I was capable of everything that was being asked of me, but I knew, deep in my heart, that I couldn't back out now. "I'll do my best," I said finally. "I can't promise anything more than that." Naroth looked at me, his ancient eyes full of something like respect. "That is all we ask." The city was built into the trees. Massive structures of living wood and organic materials, intertwined with the forest canopy. Bridges of woven vines connected the platforms, and I could see Vaildra moving through the branches with an ease that left me breathless. It was beautiful. More beautiful than anything I'd ever seen on Earth. The air was clean and fresh, filled with the scent of unknown flowers. Bioluminescent fungi dotted the bark of the trees, casting a soft, ethereal glow. "This is our home," Naroth said, gesturing with a massive claw. "The city of El Sarith. It has stood for thousands of years, since the first of our kind learned to build among the branches." I followed him through the city, my eyes wide with wonder. The Vaildra moved around us, their scales shifting colors as they worked and played. Children chased each other through the branches, their laughter a musical sound that seemed to echo through the forest. "Naroth," I said, my voice quiet. "Why me? There are millions of humans, I'm nothing special. Why did Caithrak choose me?" Naroth paused, turning to look at me with his ancient eyes. "I cannot explain the bond," he said. "It is a mystery that we have not fully unraveled, but I believe that it is not about being special. It is about being true." "True?" I asked, confused. "True to yourself," Naroth said. "True to your values. Caithrak is drawn to honesty, to integrity, to strength of character. He saw something in you that was worthy of the bond. Do not question it. Accept it." I nodded slowly, but I didn't fully understand. It felt too simple, too neat. I was just a normal guy, and yet here I was, being treated like I was something more. That night Naroth led me to a clearing in the heart of the forest. The trees here were ancient, their trunks massive and gnarled. Bioluminescent moss covered the ground, creating a carpet of soft, blue light. "This is the chamber of the bond," Naroth said. "It is where our ancestors first learned to connect with each other and with the universe beyond. You will undergo a ritual tonight to strengthen the bond with Kaithrak." My heart raced. What kind of ritual? Naroth gestured to the center of the clearing. There was a flat stone there, smooth and polished. On it were what looked like herbs and incense, and I could feel a strange energy emanating from the space. "You will sit on the stone," Naroth said. "You will open your mind to Kaithrak and you will accept the fullness of the bond. It will be painful, it will be exhausting, but it will also be the most profound experience of your life." I hesitated. The idea of sitting in the middle of a clearing while some ancient alien ritual was performed on me was terrifying. But I'd come this far. I couldn't back out now. I walked to the stone and sat down. The surface was cool and smooth beneath me, and I could feel the energy humming through it. Naroth and the other Vaildra formed a circle around me. They began to chant, their voices low and melodic. The sound vibrated through the air, through the ground, through my body. Kaithrak stepped forward and lay down beside me. His massive form was warm, and I could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing. He rested his head on the ground, his eyes fixed on mine. And then the bond opened. It was like being swallowed by a wave. I felt Kaithrak's emotions, his memories, his thoughts. I felt his joy and his sorrow, his love and his loss. I felt the lives of his ancestors, the history of his people, the wisdom of 1,000 generations. The pain was immense. I felt like I was being torn apart and reassembled, like my consciousness was being stretched to encompass something far beyond myself. I screamed. But Kaithrak was there. His presence wrapped around me, holding me steady, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I felt his strength, his courage, his unshakable certainty. And then the wave passed. I was myself again, but I was also something more. I was connected to Kaithrak in a way that felt eternal. "It is done," Naroth said, his voice filled with awe. "The bond is complete." I collapsed onto the stone, gasping for breath. My whole body was trembling, my mind reeling from the experience. But I also felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging that I'd never felt before. Kaithrak lifted his head and nudged me gently with his snout. His thoughts were warm and affectionate, filled with a love I hadn't expected. "Welcome to the pack," I heard in my mind. "Welcome home." The days that followed were peaceful. I learned to navigate the forest city, to communicate with the Vaildra, to understand their culture. It was slow work, but I was patient. I had Kaithrak by my side, and I felt more at home than I'd ever felt on Earth. But there were shadows on the horizon. The Alliance ship was still in orbit, and the crew didn't trust the Vaildra. Captain Vance had made it clear that she considered them a potential threat. "I've been monitoring your communications," she said one day, appearing on my personal comm channel. "You seem to be getting along well with the Vaildra." "They're not the monsters the Alliance thinks they are," I said. "They're peaceful, curious, intelligent." Captain Vance shook her head, her expression skeptical. "We've heard that before. The Vaildra have a history, Marcus. They've been involved in conflicts that we can't ignore." "Those conflicts were centuries ago," I insisted. "They've changed. They want peace." "Just like humans," she said. "We always want peace until we don't. Be careful, Marcus. The bond may be clouding your judgment." I ended the call, frustrated. Captain Vance was wrong. The Vaildra were different. I could feel it through the bond, feel their genuine desire for peace. But I also felt her suspicion. It was like a splinter in my mind, a constant reminder that the Alliance didn't trust me, didn't trust the Vaildra, didn't trust the bond. I was standing on a platform overlooking the forest when I felt it. A presence, different from the Vaildra, cold and calculating. I turned, my body tensing, and saw a figure standing in the shadows. He was tall, taller than any human, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. His eyes were black, like pools of darkness, and his smile was unsettling. "Marcus Webb," he said, his voice smooth and melodic. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." "Who are you?" I asked, stepping back. "I am Xandros," he said, "representative of the Alliance Security Council. You've been quite the topic of conversation, Marcus. The human who bonded with the Vaildra, the human who's become the key to the peace." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my heart racing. "The peace," Xandros said, stepping closer. "The peace that the Vaildra are offering. The peace that the Alliance is so eager to accept. But there are those of us who see through the rhetoric." "What do you mean?" Xandros' smile widened. "The Vaildra have always been opportunists. They offer peace, but they take advantage. The bond is a leash, Marcus. It's their way of controlling you, of using you as a puppet, and you don't even realize it." "You're wrong," I said firmly. "The bond isn't like that. It's a connection, a partnership." "Is it?" Xandros asked. "Or have you just been deceived? Look at yourself. You've changed, Marcus. You're stronger, faster, more resilient, but you've also become more dependent on them. You've lost your perspective, your ability to see the truth." I didn't know what to say. Xandros' words were disturbing, but they also made a certain kind of sense. I had changed. I could feel it every day. But the bond was also a source of strength, of peace. "I'll think about what you've said," I said finally. "But I need proof, more than just words." Xandros nodded, his expression satisfied. "That's all I ask, but know this, Marcus, the Alliance is watching. And we will act to protect our interests." He turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Naroth called a council that night. The leaders of the Vaildra clans gathered in the chamber of the bond, their scales glowing with a soft light in the darkness. "I have sensed a disturbance," Naroth said, his mental voice heavy with concern. "There are shadows in the forest, a presence that does not belong. The Alliance does not trust us." "We are not surprised," said a clan leader, his scales a deep red. "The Alliance has never trusted us. They see us as a threat, a relic of a violent past." "Marcus has been approached," Naroth said, looking at me, "by a man named Xandros. He has been spreading doubt, feeding Marcus's fear." I felt the weight of the council's eyes on me. "I was approached," I admitted. "He told me the bond was a trap, a way of controlling me." "And do you believe him?" Naroth asked. I looked around at the Vaildra, these creatures I'd come to trust. I looked at Caithrak, his presence a warmth in my mind. I thought about everything I'd learned, everything I'd experienced. "No," I said finally. "I don't. The bond is real, the connection is real. Whatever Xandros says, I know what I feel." The council murmured approval, their scales shifting to brighter colors. Naroth nodded, his expression satisfied. "Then you have passed the final test," he said. "You have proven your loyalty, your faith in the bond. The Vaildra accept you as one of our own." The next day, I received a message from Captain Vance. "We've been ordered to return to Earth," she said. "The Alliance Security Council has determined that the situation on Varith is too volatile. They're sending a diplomatic team to negotiate a formal agreement." "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "My place is here, with the Vaildra." Captain Vance looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Marcus, you're a human. Your home is Earth. This isn't your world." "It's become my world," I said. "The bond has made it my world. I can't leave Caithrak. I can't leave the Vaildra." Captain Vance shook her head. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said, "but it's my mistake to make." I ended the call, my heart pounding. I knew I'd just made an enemy of the Alliance. I knew there would be consequences. But for the first time in my life, I knew I was doing the right thing. A storm was brewing on Varith. Not a literal storm, though the sky was dark and the wind was howling. A political storm. The Alliance was demanding that the Vaeldra sign a treaty that would effectively make them a protectorate of the Alliance. They want to control us, Naroth said, his mental voice heavy with anger. They want to use us for our technology, our resources. They don't want a partnership. They want a colony. They won't get away with it, I said, my voice fierce. I'll stand with you. We'll fight them together. Kaithrak growled, his scales shifting to a deep red. I could feel his anger, his determination. He would fight to protect his people, and I would fight beside him. But I knew we couldn't win a direct confrontation. The Alliance was too powerful, their technology too advanced. We needed a different strategy, a diplomatic approach. I spent the night in the chamber of the bond, meditating with Kaithrak. I needed answers, guidance, and through the bond I found them. The Alliance ship arrived in orbit the next day. Captain Vance hailed the city, demanding an audience. I'll meet them alone, I said to Naroth. Let me talk to them. Let me try to negotiate a peace. You cannot trust them, Naroth warned. They are manipulative, cunning. They will try to use you. Let them try, I said. I know what's at stake. I'll make them see the truth. Kaithrak strode forward, his massive form blocking my path. I felt his concern, his doubt. He didn't want me to go alone. I have to, I said softly. Trust me, please. Kaithrak's scales shimmered, shifting to a pale blue. It was the color of acceptance, of trust. I felt his warmth through the bond, and I knew he believed in me. I took a shuttle to the Alliance ship, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd prepared a speech, rehearsed it a dozen times. But when I stood in the conference room, facing the Alliance delegation, my words failed me. Marcus Webb, Xandros said, stepping forward, we've been expecting you. You're making a mistake, I said, my voice steady. The Vaeldra aren't a threat, they're a partner. A partner that wants peace. Xandros laughed. Peace. The Vaeldra have been conquering worlds for millennia. They're predators, Marcus. Everything about them screams predator. The claws, the teeth, the instinct to dominate. You're being fooled by their gentle facade. I'm not being fooled, I said firmly. I've bonded with one of them. I've seen their culture, their history. They're not conquerors. They're survivors. They've evolved to be stronger because their world is harsh and unforgiving. But their evolution has also made them intelligent, empathetic, and cooperative. And how do you know this? Xandros asked. How do you know their history isn't just a story they've told you to gain your trust? Because the bond isn't just about sharing emotions, I said. It's about sharing memories. I've seen the history of their people through Kaithrak's eyes. I've seen their struggles, their triumphs, their darkest moments. They've been honest with me in a way that the Alliance has never been honest with humanity. Xandros' expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. You're lying. I'm not, I said. I've seen what they've been through. I've seen the wars they've fought, the treaties they've signed, the cultures they've respected. They're not perfect, but they're not the monsters you're painting them as. The delegation exchanged glances. I could feel their uncertainty through the bond, the cracks in their confidence. The Alliance has made its decision, Xandros said finally, his voice sharp. The Vaeldra will become a protectorate of the Alliance. Any resistance will be met with force. Then you'll be starting a war you can't win, I said. The Vaeldra are stronger than you think. Their technology is as advanced as yours, and their unity is unmatched. They'll fight you and they'll win. Xandros stared at me, his black eyes unblinking. He was trying to intimidate me, to make me back down, but I stood my ground. Your call, I said, but think about the consequences. Is the Alliance willing to sacrifice thousands of lives for a war that doesn't need to be fought?